I don't know if you noticed, but I feel like his hair thinned in that time frame from the first video to the second video. You know, I think there's been a lot of pressure on the bishop and on leadership, and you know, we need to be in prayer for them as well. So just a couple of updates from them. He mentioned that they were waiting to find out on jurisdictional conferences. At these jurisdictional conferences is where bishops are elected. And then where bishops are elected and then appointed from there. So the next jurisdictional conference will be held here in Houston this year. I believe it's in November, but I'm not sure it's early or late November, but it's going to be in November. It's going to be held here in Houston. New bishops will be elected, and bishops will be moved around. Now, this announcement from the Judicial Council about jurisdictional conference also stipulated that the bishops would be able to stay, until 2024, even though there was a new bishop elected, because technically the new bishop elected could not start until then. So they would kind of have to work in tandem throughout that time. But they needed bishops elected, essentially. And so, but just recently, actually, just this past week, Bishop Jones announced that even though he, at the beginning of, I guess, May, was fully committed to staying on until 2024, he has decided to put in his retirement on December 31st of this year. So, the bishop will be retiring. Which means that in January 1st of 2023, we will receive a new bishop here in the Texas Annual Conference. And as mentioned, we have 600 plus churches, like I think 642 churches or 41 churches at this point. And so Texas Annual Conference spans from like Galveston to Texarkana to, I forget how far west it goes, but it's just this kind of this side, and there's a North Texas conference. I think there's 4 conferences in Texas total, right? And so we are the Texas Annual Conference. We will be getting a new bishop then. So that's kind of news that has come through. Also, we know now that we will hold a special annual conference on December 3rd of this year. As far as, I think the figure he last gave us, and said, if my memory's wrong, let me know, it was about over 100 churches are in discernment now for their future, right? And they're expecting for there to be more churches who will enter into discernment, right? And he mentioned this kind of idea of discernment. Discernment does not equate disaffiliation, but it does mean that a church is trying to determine, right, where is God leading the church, right? Where is God leading that local church? Whether it is to stay within the United Methodist Church as it moves forward, or if it will decide to disaffiliate and go into either the local Methodist Church or go independent, which is an option that the bishop mentions from time to time, but it's not his preferred option for churches. He has, outwardly stated, right? So the churches also have the option to, go independent as well. All right, and so, that is kind of where we are right now as far as really updates. The biggest one is just, the bishop is going to be retiring. Okay. So now to our church. One of, I've stated this in previous conversations. Now, I believe that it's important that Crossroads discern its future. We don't want to wait to see what happens in 2024 or whatnot. I think if Crossroads has an idea of where it wants to go now, whether if it's to stay in the United Methodist Church or to go into a different denomination or to go independent, it has a clear pathway for its future. It won't be a lame duck in a way, right? Waiting to see what happens. I want to tell you that I think that it's very important for our church to make a decision as far as that. Why? Because our church is vibrant and growing, and we see the movement of God here. And that's because we know what we're about. We know what we're here for. And as this moves forward, it's going to be in the news outlets. It's going to be, all over the place. And for a church to not know what its decision is, I think will be detrimental to its future mission, right? To its vision for what it wants to become, and what it feels that they're here to do, right? That we're here to do. So, I've spoken with our board. Our board voted to contact our superintendent and enter into a discernment process. And so I have contacted our superintendent. We will enter into a discernment process. And we've been given some guidelines as to what that looks like. Right? Before, we really didn't have any guidelines. This has really been something that has been developing, as we go. Right? And so we've been given some guidelines. I kind of want to break it down in this way. We will have informational sessions like this, and we will have listening sessions as well. Okay? Informational sessions to really, I see a lot of the same faces that I've seen before. I've seen some new faces as well, but essentially, our church needs to be informed onto all of these things. And I'll be doing more big group conversations, but I'll also be trying to do some smaller group conversations as well, where I'm giving out all of this information to people. I want to go see our Sunday school classes and perhaps even hold some of these in people's homes if I need to. But my hope is to inform 100% of our congregation. I can't force somebody to sit and listen to me, right? But I want to make it as available as possible. We will even be recording. We're recording tonight, so just FYI, we're recording tonight. We're recording tonight, so we will put together kind of a video, and hopefully, so that this information will be accessible also for everyone as well, right? And so it's going to have informational sessions. Now, the listening sessions, will be sessions where we will have some questions to ask the groups, and we want to listen. We want to discern where people's hearts are, what the hopes for the future are for this congregation. Okay, and so there will be listening sessions where we're going to invite you. Those will probably be smaller groups, 20, 15 people at a time, so that we can have enough time to listen to everybody. Or at least everybody will have an opportunity to speak and be heard. And so I have these listening sessions. We will have some information. As information comes through, I'll be sharing via email and these sessions as well. Again, a lot of this is kind of constantly evolving. We were all, there are some things that there's some new things that are developing that we still don't know which way they're going to go, but as soon as there's a real solution to anything, I'll bring it forward for the group to know and be aware. Okay? Kind of like the bishop said, we'll just as information, as he receives information, he'll be giving it to us, the clergy, and to the conference, and so forth. I'll be bringing it to the congregation as well. Okay? If we discern through this process that there's a substantial desire for perhaps a disaffiliation, then we will have to, as the bishop explained, call a church conference and have a church vote on it, right? A church conference is different from a charge conference. A charge conference is the leadership of the church with the clergy, and so it's kind of limited in people. A church conference is all of the membership body of the church. Okay. Now there are some stipulations to that, right? You have to be there to vote. you can't. There's no mail-in ballots, right? There's no. There's no phone-in. It won't be via Zoom. You will have to be present in order, and it will be the quorum of that group present, right? Of course, we will, if we discern that will be a way for us to move forward, that we will need to call a church conference, then that means that we will announce it with plenty of time. I'm hoping three weeks. If you'll let me get through this, and then I'll take questions in a little bit, okay? And so, and essentially that's kind of the process that is laid out for discernment for us, right? In a nutshell. There are some dates that we need to be aware of because, if in our process of discernment, they're suggesting that it be at least 40 days, right? So a month and a half, it may take longer. But if our church discerns to disaffiliate, or we see a strong enough desire from the church to want to disaffiliate and hold a church conference and the vote passes, then we have a time frame of where we need to do legal things, right? And so that cutoff date for us to do that would be by November 10th. So by November 10th, okay? Which, gives our church plenty of time to be in conversation, not to rush through anything, but, to really, listen and hear and discern, what the Spirit is speaking to us, okay? Pause right here and I'll take Sarah's question.
Real quick, why do you have to be present?
It's simply the rules that they gave us. You have to be present because there'll be a ballot vote, and we'll need to, since it has to be membership of the church, and some folks maybe have been coming to the church for a long time and think they're members, and maybe they're not members, so we have to reference with our role as well. And so, essentially that's the explanation I was given. Because I did ask, it's in the world of Zoom and all of that, but they've told me that, the cabinet feels strongly that it needs to be people present on this kind of vote. Yes, ma'am.
You said something about that you have gotten some guidelines for the discernment process. Is that something that we could all see?
Yes, it's on the website, and I can send the link. On the Texas Annual Conference website, there is a tab that says Navigating the Waters. All of the information that we have is on there as well. Okay, and so and all these videos and anything that's happened prior to since the last time he's spoken. They're all archived on there. So you can look for all of this information as well on the Texas Annual Conference website. Yes, ma'am.
You're not talking about the global church just being organized and just getting started. When it doesn't have a constitution and
it has a transitional book of.
And that sort of thing, it's really organized to a church can step into it.
So I can tell you that if you go to the Global Methodist Church website, they have a transitional book of discipline. So it has a lot of the questions that you just posed, they're answered on there because they have a book of discipline there that kind of delves into it, all of those questions. Now, as I understand it, and as it has been explained to me, it is a transitional book of discipline because obviously as the church is forming, they will hold or I guess, I don't know what they're going to call it, right? But they're going to hold conferences for the church to where they need to, either amend or affirm paragraphs and things like that. And to folks who love any kind of legal matters and legal language, this would be your bread and butter, right? Like this would be, Disneyland for you, right? But essentially, this is a forming group, right? This is a forming group. They have a lot of things kind of written down and on paper, but as the church is formed, as it's growing and as it has its annual conference or general conference, however they're going to call it, as its conferences, it'll be still taking shape for the first several years. So
now, if anyone wants to check that website, it's txcumc.org/navigating the waters.
yeah, that's the conference website. That's the
That is
NFC website.
the one
The Global Methodist Church, Google Global Methodist Church, first thing that pops up is that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
These informational sessions you're going to be having, will you be presenting information from a position of neutrality or trying to influence one way or the other, or just a general discussion of all three options that we have available?
So they'll be like they have been, which is, I'm trying to present all of the information to the church, right? I can't guarantee that my bias won't come through, but, I'll try to be as free of information, with the information as I can.
So if your bias is going to happens to come through, should there not be someone else of a different viewpoint also helping us understand what our options are?
Well, part of that is going to come through some of these sessions. There is one session that will be given by the conference where there will be two different viewpoints, kind of two videos with different viewpoints given and things like that. So I believe it'll be fair. Okay, so I do believe it'll be fair. But I appreciate you asking the question. Yes, ma'am.
These sessions that you're talking about, are they gonna be webinar sessions, or are we gonna have sessions here in our church with our own members?
Sessions in our church with our own members. There are, for example, there is a group, and he mentioned this group, which is the Task Force, which one was it? The Task Force for a Way Forward, or something like that. And they're going to have 10 sessions from, I believe, July 3rd through August 20-something. And so at these sessions, they're going to, this task force kind of has morphed into one giving all the information that it can on the options from a more neutral stance, because the task force is made up of people from, both progressive, traditional, centrist, or however you want to label kind of these groups, right? And so part of those, as I understand it, there will be videos from both ends, right? People who would want you to stay within the United Methodist Church, and people who would want you to go into like the Global Methodist Church, right? The only option that is really going to be absent is independent. Be an independent church. For the most part, really staying in the United Methodist Church or going into kind of the Global Methodist Church is really overarching kind of like the main talking, points that we're going to be hearing.
So what is these task force gonna do? Are they gonna come here?
No. We're going to, I will attend it as part of myself, Pastor Leo, some of our leaders will attend these. Then we will be giving the information and giving these videos that we can share with our congregation.
So we're gonna look at videos like this?
Mm-hmm.
Because to tell you the truth, as a new Methodist person, a lot of that stuff just went over my head. All these conferences, conference. So we need clip notes or some handouts.
Well, and I understand.
Or something that we can say, okay,
Part of that handout was one that I gave you. If you study that, a lot of these terms will make sense to you. Yes. And those are really the Cliff's Notes of it. I don't think I can condense it down more than that.
But this tells us the Methodist Church as its structure.
Yes.
What I'm saying, or I think I'm trying to say, is what is the difference between? We need the differences.
Great question. I have a handout that I'll give you today that hopefully gives you more of an overarching thing between the Global Methodist Church and the United Methodist Church. Is that what you're asking?
Right.
Yes.
What's the difference? What are we?
Yes, I have a handout
What
that.
are we going from, possibly to?
Mm-hmm.
What are the differences in this whole LGBT, ABCD, you know, so you can say, actually, I'd like to know where we, right now, this church stands on all those things, pretty much in black and white, versus what the, I guess, well, the global is what we are now, basically, right?
So I guess I can answer you to this. I have a handout. It's not fully comprehensive, but it gives you kind of the major points of differentiation between them. Here's the thing. The United Methodist Church right now, our doctrine states that we do not, again, as the bishop mentioned, right, that while we see LGBTQ plus people as people of sacred worth, but we do not feel that the lifestyle or the practice of it is in line with Scripture. Right? So that's why we do not ordain practicing LGBTQ plus persons, and we do not hold same-sex marriages within our churches, and our clergy is not allowed to perform same-sex marriages. That's the doctrine that we have right now. That's the doctrine that we follow here at Crossroads. That's what I signed up for whenever I became a pastor. Right? So that's where it stands now. And I'll further clarify this. He mentioned it, but if that's our doctrine, why are traditionists leaving? Is a lot of times what the question is. What the major crux of it is the disobedience to the discipline and the lack of accountability to it. So there are conferences right now where the discipline is not being followed. He mentioned a bishop who is married to a woman married to another woman who is a bishop. The Judicial Council, which is kind of the United Methodist Church's, I guess, Supreme Court equivalent, so to speak, has said this is unlawful. I mean, under the church, the discipline, this can't happen. But nothing is being done about it. And so when traditionalist churches, and again, this is not all of them, but there are a group who see this and say, we don't want to be a part of a church that doesn't honor the things that we have decided to do. And we want to leave. And so that's where the Global Methodist Church formation has come really from. Okay. The question is going to be, what is the future for the United Methodist Church look like? And what will it look like when a lot of traditional churches leave? And it will go in a more progressive way? And what is the Global Methodist Church promising or saying that it will be? And so those are the ways that we need to look at it, right? The future of the UMC and really what the Global Methodist Church is saying. Now, I have, if I pass it out to you guys, you're not going to pay attention right now. So I'm not going to pass it out. But there's like a 3-sheet thing that I found online that talks about kind of like some of the major areas or things that between the UMC and the Global Methodist Church. And it talks a lot about it as what will happen with the UMC, right? And and then what is the Global Methodist Church proposing it will do, okay? And that would be something that you can take home and you can study. These are just really Cliff's Notes, I would say, and I would say that you want to kind of do more research if you want to know more, right? Because you know, in these kinds of sessions, I can't go over every detail either. But my door is open, and if you want to make an appointment with me, and I can sit down with you and kind of answer as many questions as you can, and a lot of those I just don't know. Okay? And I'm sorry, Chuck, and then Ms. Sarah. But did I answer your question?
I have so many more.
I understand.
So many.
I understand. But and please, I'd love to sit down and answer as many questions as I can. That goes for everybody. Okay. Chuck, yes, Mr. Chuck.
Okay, to simplify the whole thing, I'm still confused after 3 meetings. If we want to stay with the Methodist belief that have been in place for 230 years, we will go with the Global Methodist Church. If
Essentially,
we want
yes.
to go with the more progressive or liberal church, then we stay with the United Methodist Church. And if we don't like either one, then we go back.
Independent is not a nom, okay? In the church talk. Yes, essentially yes. Yes, Ms. Sarah.
Okay, because, you know, Pastor Bishop heard and I felt like he was being biased. Are we going to have the next meeting we have, get together, are we going to have someone else's viewpoint? Because I feel like we're only getting a one-sided viewpoint.
And while I hear that, but I would say it's research. We will present the information, and I have a session coming up. That little paper, the Bible and Sexuality. I think is what I
The
titled it.
26th, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is coming up, yes, this Sunday. And, you know, I will be going over kind of what our doctrine says right now and what people want to change it to and why.
That is this Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m.
Yeah. What people want to change it to and why. And so I will be doing that. But, you know, like the bishop said, there's a lot of information out there, right? There's a ton of videos that you can watch. And there's a lot of, and a lot of it is easy to find. And if you want more information, you can find it. Yes, ma'am.
You said earlier that some of us might think we're members of the church and we're not.
Yes.
So how do we know?
Call me. Call me and just make sure if you want to. But we're actually kind of revising the roles right now just to ensure that, you know, we have as accurate of information as we can. And I think we'll put out a list as we finalize it that people can look at beforehand. And if there's any questions about it, then, you know, we can talk about, you know, what that is, right? And how to rectify it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get to you, Don, but I saw like several, they're just kind of half. Yes, was that you saying?
Yes.
Okay, and then Don, and then.
Okay. Are there issues involved other than just sexual issues? Liturgical issues and theological points?
So, you know, I might have lost it. Could you repeat that question?
Are there other issues just in addition or besides the homosexual issues that are between the two factions?
So, I would say that there is a hope, right? You know, there is this idea that it's just about the homosexual or the LGBT
Sexual identity.
you know, question. But that's not what's causing traditional roots to be or to want to be, because they've been part of that debate for 40 plus years, right? I mean, it's just been part of that debate. It's been part of the United Methodist Church's kind of, you know, every conference and every general conference. It's been taught. I would say that the essence of why a lot of traditionalists want to leave is the violation of the discipline and the precedent that creates, right? You know, they see it as a justice issue, but then what will be the next issue past that will cause violation of discipline? And so you create this precedent of, you know, a violation of the disciplines, basically. So that's one major one. The other one is, it's a bit minor, but it's still there. And it's this idea that, you know, a lot of the structure of the United Methodist Church is just overloaded. And a lot of churches feel their apportionment dollars aren't really being utilized well. You know, overarching, right? And so, and you know, they pay their apportionments faithfully, but they feel like it's not being utilized all that well. And so I would say those three, I mean, are really the main ones. But of course, yes, the LGBTQ plus question has been a part of the process for a long time. It is a major question. Now, Mr. Don and I promised you after Mr. Don. Mr. Gilbert, you'll be after her, okay?
Did I understand the bishop correctly on the, let me preface my comment by the general conference, when they voted to go to the traditional, was swayed primarily by a large contingent of non-USA voting methods.
Mm-hmm.
Did I understand him correctly when he said that under the global Methodist organization, that the non-USA entities would not be able to vote on development of the United States?
It's the other way around. It's the other way around. So, as right now, so these are conversations that are being had, and they're just not, because there hasn't been a general conference, and we still don't know what that's going to be in 2024, right? But there are conversations being had of separating what they call the central conferences and let me go to our trusty diagram here so that we can all follow along. So to separate the where are they? Yeah, the jurisdictional and the central conferences. Now, jurisdictional conferences are the conferences within the United States. And then the central conferences are, you know, Africa, the Philippines, they're outside of the United States. Eastern Europe has some conferences as well. And so there's talk that at the General Conference of 2024, they hope to kind of separate, as I understand it, right? As I understand it, in a way, operate autonomously, but share some of the overarching missional, but also like Westpath and
connections
and connectional, you know, entities that the United Methodist Church has.
Well, I got it wrong. I wasn't global.
No.
So there will be a large contingent, apparently, of non-USA traditionals moving over into the global side.
They're
going to be pretty dominant. More so than they are now.
We don't know. I know that I can tell you that, like, for example, Bulgaria Annual Conference wants to move into the Global Methodist Church, right? But I don't know much about Africa and the Philippines or things like that. I think they would like to go global. I don't know if it will be possible for them or how that works. Because obviously there's the Judicial Council made a difference between what conferences in the United States can do and what conference outside of the United States can do with its last decree. Is that the right word? Mm-hmm. The last thing that they said. And so, I think that's beyond my capacity. But I do believe that a lot of the traditionalist folks or churches that would like to go into the Global Methodist Church, but I don't know how possible or what that even looks like.
That's something we would not know. We might make a decision to go this direction, not knowing a lot of information about
Yeah.
who we're gonna be.
Yeah,
With.
essentially, there are, for example, again, the Global Methodist Church is forming, so yes, we would not know. But I do believe that they have stated that they would operate globally. So if, an African conference or churches within Africa want to join the Global Methodist Church, they can do so. At a global gathering, or however that would look like, they would have votes within those. But how much, how many, that's really kind of unknown right now, as I understand it.
United Methodist Church today, how much of a vote do these other countries, continents have in the United Methodist Church?
I would say it's a fair equal vote, I would say. Africa is growing at a rate where, as far as votes go, it will overtake the United States churches if it hasn't already. Okay? Man, yes.
It's been answered.
Oh, yeah, you got it. All right, Mr. Gilbert.
No, actually, once the churches make their decision whether to go to global or UMC, what is going to happen? How is the global church going to handle it if an LGBTQ person wants to join them? Are they going to reject them?
No.
How's that going to be?
Methodist Church down in
Under our doctrine right now, we don't reject anybody. Wants to be
How
in.
is that distinction going to be advertised?
Do you mean as far as leadership and superintendents and bishops? Is that really where you're going, or are you talking about church membership?
Membership.
Church membership? Okay.
Yeah, no, it would be as it is right now, where people are welcome. People are welcome to be part of the life of the church. However, no, it's not just that. If a practicing couple wants to be part of our church, they can be, but they can't participate in leadership. They wouldn't be able to enter into any kind of clergy positions or things like that. We wouldn't be able to marry them within the church, and our teaching would be our teaching.
So they can be members, they just have to know the rules and be okay with it.
They just cannot be pastors or they cannot get married. But other than that, they can participate as you and me and anyone else.
Can they be baptized?
Yeah. They baptize, they can partake of communion, they can do the life of the church, they just don't have access to being an elder or a deacon, and
Or
they cannot
leadership
get,
within the church.
or they cannot get
On
married.
the board? No? Sorry, what's your question? No?
You say that the paper can't be on board.
Under our current discipline, no.
Well, you violated the rule, I think, past 66.
Correction. Practicing LGBTQ person, right? It would be the caveat there. So. Yes, ma'am.
Somebody asked, will we be the only two issues? And one of the other issues is that a lot of the progressive church is saying that the Bible is a suggestion. It was not, no, it was not by God. It was by men, and so it's fallible. And that also that Jesus is not necessarily the Son of God. There's other kind of things like that are also being raised. Now, I don't have all the details, but I just said were just things that I've read about. So I'm just saying there are other issues besides Okay.
The only thing I guess I could speak to that would be that, you know, in a denomination this size, there's always fringes on both sides. And while, you know, I've read some things like that, I don't believe that that's kind of the norm. And at the same time, even, you know, there's fringes in our traditional, traditional leaning folks, fundamentalists. And, you know, the United Methodist Church is not a fundamentalist church, right? And so, you know, I don't want to frame a group by its kind of worst members. I don't think that would be fair.
I just read that when I was doing some research, so just keep doing the research, everybody. So
Yeah, absolutely. You know, please do, you know, read up and again, any questions or anything that you know aren't sure about, come and talk to me. Again, you know, there are some things that may not be clear, or there are some questions that might be had that perhaps I don't articulate well, kind of in this big group, and that I may even have to think about a little bit further than, you know, than now. And so, because, you know, this is quite a large topic, right? There's quite a large and broad topic, and it's not essentially as black and white, right? There are nuances to this as well, right? Within the traditional, within the progressive, and sometimes I don't even know what title, what label to use, right? When I'm talking about it, because I understand, or I see these nuances. I have, you know, like the bishop mentioned, like I have several friends, clergy friends, right, who land on the other side as myself, okay? And I love them dearly, and I believe they're loving, faithful, you know, clergy people, right? I have a great deal of respect for them, and so, you know, these are our brothers and sisters. Right? They're brothers and sisters in Christ. And, you know, our church needs to understand that conversations that we have to be done in love, in grace, and respect. Okay? Love, grace, and respect. And we need to enter into discernment with that spirit. And we need to be in prayer. I'll be publishing a kind of a calendar of prayer, to kind of put it that way, that hopefully you can follow along with. I'm more than likely maybe starting in July. I'll be opening, you know that I'm having the Bible study on Wednesday mornings, 10 to 11. I bring the coffee, you bring the donuts. But I may open our church up, from our sanctuary up from 9 to 10 for prayer. For anyone who comes in, wants to come in to pray, you know, about this. Okay? And so, you know, prayer is going to be very important for us as well. Okay? Yes, I think her first. Ms. Helen.
I know when this first started, a few years back, there was discussion about the churches that decide to go into global, the financial aspect, the church building, the property, and all of that stuff. And from what I think I remember the bishop saying, that all of that is worked out. So if this church decides to go to global, the property still remains the church's.
Yes. Could you help me pass this out, Senor? Thank you. So, you know, just to kind of quickly answer that, and he's going to be passing out what I'm going over. He mentioned, right, paying our bills, you know, paying the previous year and the current year's apportionments. For this church, the apportionments are about $32,000. Okay? So it would mean that, and these are like the apportionments, not extra apportionments, but the apportionments that we've already had. So for example, our church paid last year's apportionments, and we're up to date with our apportionments this year. So if the church disaffiliates, it would only have to pay whatever's left of the year's apportionments, right?
People that decide to stay.
Oh, I'm sorry?
I think that will really happen. If people decide to stay, they're going to pay those apportionments.
This is only for people who want to disaffiliate. So people who want to leave.
Okay.
Yes. To stay in the UMC, nothing happens. You don't have to pay anything. But to leave, to disaffiliate to the Global Methodist Church or to go independent, you do have to pay. Right?
Do you think that will happen? I mean,
Yes. Yes, because it's already happening. Right? Because the conference holds the deeds to our church, to our building, and to our property. It doesn't belong to the congregation. If the church wants to have its property, it needs to pay these things, right? And so, otherwise, the conference could just close the doors, right, and say you got to go find somewhere else because it's the conference's property. Okay? So it has to make these payments. And so it's the previous and the current year's apportionments, and then what they call the church's portion of unfunded pension liability. Okay, and Ted, would you break that down for us?
I'll try. All right, so,
Hold on, so that it records.
Okay, so we have a pension plan for our pastors. And we also have a series of retired pastors and or their beneficiaries, their spouses. And those people are still being paid their pension. Now, at the end of the day, there is an unfunded liability, which means that there's an awful lot of pension money out there that will ultimately need to be paid, but it has not been set aside. In other words, it hasn't been charged. It's kind of a pay-as-you-go claim from the different churches it is. And right now, that unfunded liability, I believe, was $55 million in the Texas Conference. However, there are reserves right now, about $42 million that they can use against that $55 million.
I think it was 52.
52. Okay, so it's about $10 million that has now been unfunded. That all the churches within the Texas Conference, 642, did you say? Something like that. Anyways, would have to pay if all of them were to leave. So there's going to be a calculation about how much your individual church has paid into the pension plan over the years, and determine what that percentage that they will assess to our church should we go global and want to leave United Methodist Church. We would pay a certain percentage of that $10 million. I don't know if that makes it clear.
Explain it better than me.
To add to that is just the notion that once you're part of a pension plan, whether you leave your employer or not, you're still part of that pension plan. So you're also funding, if I'm going to use you as an example, if you leave the United Methodist Church, they're still responsible for a portion of your retirement if you're vested. And so that's what you're paying for, is they can no longer pay it on your behalf. They have to hold it. Like I quit my previous employer 25 years ago. I'm still on their pension plan, and I'm going to receive a pension when I retire. And so the same thing, if you leave United Methodist, then there's still a retirement that United Methodist is responsible for. Otherwise, they lose all this tax credit they've gained for 100 years.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I appreciate you letting me know. So yes, at this past conference, there was the resolution passed to use our reserves to calculate to what that total fund was. And in my notes said, I believe it was that the conference had 55. What was owed was $55 million, but the conference had $52 million in reserves. So it was actually only 3 million, at least those were the figures that we were given at conference, had 3 million that was unfunded. And so it's a percentage of that 3 million at our last, and again, that number varies from church to church. Like, so our percentage would not be the same as Friendswood United Methodist or like Clear Lake United Methodist, right?
So do we have a number yet?
We requested it, and they've told me it'll be a few weeks before they can get it back to us. So we have requested it already. Yes, sir.
I have a comment. Obviously, the financial side is certainly important to all of us, but the discernment process is really where we need to focus first. And our objective of the discernment process is to make sure everybody has balanced information, both whether it's a progressive perspective or a traditional perspective. And as we look forward, then we'll have some information we're providing. Is that correct, Patrick?
Yes, correct.
We can research on our own, think about, and then have these listening sessions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's as this goes on, there will be more opportunities for, open sessions where you can go and get more information, even outside of your local church, right? So there's going to be a lot of opportunities as we know about them, but I'll let you know about them. But again, all of this information will also be on the website, and you may even find it there before even I am able to get it out, right? So look at Navigating the Waters at Texas Annual Conference website so that you can be aware of like all these conversation sessions. They're all going to be on that page, and where they're going to be that are more either district kind of wide or conference wide. Okay. Yes, Ms. Carol, and then.
I was just gonna say, I've been a Methodist as of today, 82 years. And I do not want to leave the Methodist church. And I'm gonna cry if I have to put my necklace. But anyway, I know that sounds silly, but the point I'm making is that we're being very careful. We're reading and we're checking everything, reading all the things we can find, which is what everybody needs to do so you can make an intelligent decision. You know, it's hearsay doesn't help you. And so I think it's very important that everybody come to all the meetings and that everybody go on the internet and get all the information you can possibly get, because I personally don't want to move. I want to be a Methodist the rest of my life. I started a Methodist, I want to end up a Methodist. So it's very difficult.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Chris.
Once we have go through the discernment process, I guess it will boil down to a church vote. Is it a simple majority that would decide which way we would go, or is it a...
That's a good question. It's looking less and less likely that it will be a simple majority. I can tell you that. There's some decisions that haven't come through yet, and so I can't definitively say that it's not a simple majority, but it's looking more and more likely like it would be a 2/3 vote to disaffiliate. Yes.
But the people that are present that day to vote.
Correct, yes. So again, once we discern that our church would need to vote, then there will be plenty of time, 3-4 weeks of announcing. Hopefully that people can get it on their calendar and make it a point to be there.
Did the bishop say in that question and answer session though, it's 50% to the Global Methodist and 2/3 to become independent?
He did say that.
And Pastor said that the last
Where did you get that?
So in the rest of the second.
Hold on there. I want our folks to hear.
So in the rest of the second video, The bishop said that to go to the Global Methodist Church because it was another Methodist church, it would be a simple majority vote. To go to a independent status, it would be a 2/3 vote. Has that changed, or is it still in the air?
Now that is in question now at Judicial Council, and there's a question of whether or not one of the paragraphs will be strict, will apply or not. And so at the last meeting I was at, the bishops suggested that it would have to be under the paragraph, and forgive me, I'm not good with the paragraphs here, but under the paragraph that would stipulate a 2/3 vote, would more than likely be the one to win the day, but he wasn't for sure either. So again, we're just uncertain until he mentioned that it could be possibly in August that we would get a definitive on that from Judicial Council.
So for the churches that have already decided, do you know what they use?
Many of them have gone independent, so they had to go the 2/3. The two that went to other denominations, they went under the simple majority. But they did that last year. So again, as this evolves, then we know more. Now I can tell you that. No, I'm not going to tell you that until I know. Because it would just be hearsay at this point. I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
This might be a little silly question, but who are the voters besides being a member? How old? Is there an age?
So to be considered a full voting member, we consider if you've been baptized and gone through confirmation. So children who we have confirmed, right, actually have a vote.
Sixth grade and up.
Yeah. So, but again, they have had to have gone through confirmation, right, and been confirmed. So, at that point, they become voting members of the church. Yes, ma'am.
How does it affect clergy? As clergy, are you ordained to the United Methodist Church?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so what if the church you are with makes another decision?
I don't know.
So that's.
So the church vote and the church decision and the pastor decision essentially are two separate decisions, right? Whatever the church chooses doesn't mean that the pastor automatically goes with what the church chooses. Right? As it's been mentioned, right? There's pensions, there's livelihoods, there's a lot of stuff that clergy also have to consider in making this decision. Some of it still hasn't been cleared up for us, although some things have. And I've advised Pastor Leo, as I will do myself, we need to talk to Westpath, who handles our pension. And so that we can inform ourselves well. There's insurance that we have coverage through the United Methodist Church. There are a lot of things, right? There's also for pastors, we have to consider what system do we want to be under, right? As far as an appointment system, there is something to our appointment system, our bishop system, where we are sent into a church, right? Through a process of discernment, a prayerful process of discernment, where the bishop and the cabinet send a pastor into a church, and we are sent, right? As opposed to being hired by the church, right? So, there's a lot of considerations for myself as a clergy person. I just got ordained, right, into the United Methodist Church. To be honest, this is very conflicted, for myself as well. I've had conflicting feelings throughout all of this, right? I have my convictions, but man, church has been really good to me, right? Like, this is where my ministry has developed, and where I've been supported, and where I received the calling and took the calling and was affirmed in my calling, you know? So, like the church, it's not quite as an easy a decision, at least personally, for, you know, to make. And I am in prayer for all of it as well.
Do you know of any churches that are going through the discernment?
Yes, I do know of, or at least I do know that of their intention to go into discernment. I don't know if, I've been on vacation, but I don't know if they have actually contacted the bishop. I was up in the Central North Conference, and I believe the superintendent up there mentioned 20 churches in his conference. In his district. Sorry, I was in the Central North District. There we go, Central North District, and he mentioned about 20 churches had already contacted him about discernment. And just to kind of put it in perspective, at least in our district, South District, I believe there's 46 churches. So if it's equivalent, then it would be around half of the churches in that district have contacted for discernment. So, yes, sir. And we've got 10 minutes, and I will be passing these out, no worries. Yes, ma'am.
Do you foresee a vote this year for our church?
I do. If the sermon process is around 40 days, even if we double it, it's still kind of within the time frame. And I wouldn't want this to drag on either, because I don't think that would be helpful. Yes, ma'am.
I'm confused on the church, the building here and the property.
Mm-hmm.
It's a building, it's got.
You're on, come on. So, are you confused as like who owns it, or how that works?
Who owns it?
Okay.
How will that work?
So this very minute, the Texas Annual Conference owns this building, and we have it in trust. That's why we have trustees, right? Because we care for it, we pay for it, in trust of the Texas Annual Conference. And so that's why a church can't, the congregation can leave, but the building would stay, right?
So it's a possibility that if this church decided to go global, that we would have to find another building?
No. That's why the process for disaffiliation, or not the process, but the principles of disaffiliation that the bishop mentioned, right? The paying of the previous and current year's apportionments, and the portion of unfunded pension liability, those are paid off, then the conference releases the deeds to the church, the property to the
So
church.
it would become ours?
However, that's what makes it, the importance of making a decision has a lot to do with the assets as it does with anything else. For those people that want to wait and see what happens in 24, the decision could very well come down to, no, you gotta go, we keep the building. Or a portion of the assets you gotta buy.
So it's the rules now.
Yeah, the rules now are no.
Right.
So we need to decide one way or the other.
And just, you brought that up, the current principles expire December 31st of 2023. 2023. So next year. So while we do know what our previous year's apportionments are paid, our current year's apportionments are up to date. The one number we don't have is our portion of unfunded pension liability, and that is being processed right now at the conference. Hopefully we can have it in a few weeks. And so that way the church can be informed as far as financially what it would take. But once those are paid and so let me put it to you this way. If the church would vote to disaffiliate, it would have to pay these things. December 3rd, the conference would vote to allow all these churches in bold to disaffiliate, and then the churches would be able to receive all of their assets or the deed to their properties in full as owners of those.
So at that point, if this particular church went down that path, and we got our deed, then Crossroads owns this building, or would it be a global?
No, it would be Crossroads' building.
Global has already determined that they will not take assets into it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would continue to be Crossroads' building. It would not be, the name would have to change to Crossroads Global Methodist Church, right? As far as like the legal documents.
But we're the only ones controlling this building and the deed.
Yes. Yes, the church owns the property. Not the pastor, right? The church owns the property.
You mentioned something earlier about $32,000.
That's just the number of our apportionments, right? That's how much we pay every year in apportionments to the church. We're paid up from last year to this year. Like we're paid up. We pay them every year, and so our church is always, at least as Crossroads, right? It has always paid its apportionments. So, the example would be, if the church disaffiliate were to vote to disaffiliate and December 30th it would be voted on, then it would only have to pay the remainder of 2022's apportionments would be that 1 month, right? It would be December. That's what it would be. Yeah, that's the example. Okay, last question. Yes, ma'am.
So, if we decide to go global, we would know what we would have to pay the global folks, because we're going to have to pay them something to join. I mean, some sort of.
So I would tell you, we know and we have an idea, right? And the percentage is about half of what is paid in the United Methodist Church. So instead of like 32,000, it would be somewhere around 15, 16,000. And there have been talks about even making that less, because in the Global Methodist Church, as you read their transition book of discipline, they don't have like a superintendent office, right? It would be an elder at a local church would have a superintendency over a smaller group of churches, right? And so, and a bishop, while there would be a bishop office, it would not be, Main Street, Houston, with all of the overhead that comes with, right? So it's just a leaner, smaller, I guess, form of structure. So I've heard from 15,000 and to even like bring it down to 10,000, so a third of what is paid. So. But that's not fully determined yet until that church has its first conference to ratify everything.
Mission statement, can we have it on the discernment process? What is our objective? What are we trying to achieve?
Our churches? Yes, that's a good point. Thank you. We can do that.
What do you say? I'm sorry.
If we could, publish our mission statement and our objectives as Crossroads.
As far as the discernment process, what are we trying to achieve? How are we communicating that to the involved?
I think that'll be real important. And especially as we enter into our listening sessions, but even in our informational sessions. Thank you for bringing that up. I want to pass these out, but I need an assistant. Thank you. Yeah. So I would recommend you this website, and it's Chris Ritter's peopleneedjesus.org, I believe, .net. Oh, he's getting y'all too? Wow, you're on it. Get this side. And Chris Ritter has a compendium on his website where anything that has to do with the United Methodist Church, whether it's traditional, progressive, is on there. So any articles that are published, anything that anybody, writes on the internet is all compiled on that compendium. And so if you want a resource to quickly kind of go through, it would be that one. Again, it's peopleneedjesus.net. And this article was on there. It's really one of the only charts that I could find that really was not too complicated. And just kind of give you an overview of the two churches, right? And so, but again, this was something that I found online, and I searched. I searched a lot of websites. This was just the less convoluted of charts. But there are more charts, more in-depth charts. If you like to get into paragraph 48b, right, and whether or not there should be a comma before or after the B, there are charts for you right out there. But if you just want kind of like a Cliff's Note and kind of overview, I think this was the best one. And hopefully, as things move along, hopefully there will be more published and more accessible, right? At least maybe our conference will be able to kind of put something together for us, or this task force that will be presenting soon.
Next Tuesday will be just like this one.
Yes, so good, thank you. So yes, the next meeting will be this exact same one.
I'm not coming twice.
No, so you don't have to come twice, but the next Tuesday meeting will be this. I will have some Sunday meetings. I can't have it on the 10th. It's Elijah's birthday, so I just can't do it. And so, but the following Sunday, I'll be publishing more dates, more informational sessions. And then as we go into the listening sessions, the listeners will probably be a group, right? It won't just be me. It'll be just probably a 3 to 5 person panel. Again, just to listen and to kind of get a sense of where our church is as we listen and as we discern, right? That's kind of how that's gonna be processed. As things get formalized, as we know more, as the bishop also gives us more information on more definitive things, I will be probably sending out videos, because I think that's probably just the best way for me to do it, and so that they can also be referenced, right? And so I'll be sending out links to videos that we'll put on our YouTube page, so that I can go over any changes and or any new information that's out there. And and again, if you need to speak to me, again, I know this is complicated. This is complicated for me, right? Sometimes I don't even know if I got it straight all the way, but don't hesitate to ask me to sit down with you. I can come visit you. I can come to your home. We can spend some time. We can really kind of, I can answer as best as I can, and then whatever I don't know for sure, I can look up, and hopefully there's an definitive answer out there for whatever question it is.
What's the deadline?
I believe it was November 10th was if we wanted to make the December 3rd conference. November 10th. So that's, where are we, July? No, we're June, right? So say July, August, September, October. That's nearly 5 months. So again, I think that's just plenty of time for our church. Folks, I can tell you this. Whether this church decides to stay in the United Methodist Church, or decides to the Global Methodist Church, I think it traces a clear path forward for itself. And without any ambiguity, without any kind of, uncertainty, right? And I think that's just the best place for Crossroads to find itself going into 2023. Okay? Our church has seen a resurgence. Quite honestly, did you see this past Sunday? Right? We had probably our biggest Sunday. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was bigger than Mother's Day. What? I think it was bigger than Mother's Day. And not as big as Easter, right?
That's true.
But it was, we had visitors in almost every service. I think we did have visitors in every service. We have been seeing consistent visitors to our church. We are seeing our church, really flourish and because we're doing God's work, right? And we're not going to stop doing God's work. We're not going to stop doing ministry. We're not going to hold anything on pause. We're going to have our conversations. We're going to go through our discernment process, but we're here to do God's work, right? We're here to feed the hungry, right? To serve the needy, to serve one another, to worship God, to study the scriptures together. That's what we're going to be about. That's what we're going to do. And because obviously we see people needing this and wanting this and finding it here because they're wanting to be a part of Crossroads. And so, beyond our discernment, Crossroads will remain Crossroads. Right? We have been together up until now. We will be together afterwards. Right? Because the church is God's. The church is Jesus Christ. Let me say a prayer, and I'll go get some tea, and we can all go home. Heavenly Father, thank you. And we just ask for your help and for your guidance. As we enter into discernment, Lord, be with us. Lord, hold us in the right spirit. Help us, Father, as we have our conversations, Lord, to be loving, to be gracious, to be respectful, and to know, Lord, that ultimately we're here to serve you. And we thank you for this time. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
See you next time.
The jars, these are the antique ones, so you have to bring them
I have
back.
to be careful. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to put them down on the floor.
All right, I expect the others on Sunday.
Yes, ma'am.
I have to be the middle person.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll get them back to you. I'll get them to you.
All right.
That door was so cute, by the way.
Yeah. After the first.
Did she fall?
She fell.
Oh,
I mean,
I
she
heard it.
fell when she was a dance recital too. It's just something she does. She did.
She's such a sweetheart.
But yeah, I had to bribe her to do the second and third services. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
I mean, you're gonna get rid of it? Which is they're all trying to get, there's the